Come on in, pull up a chair and take a load off, because today I'm going to share a Kickstarter preview of Apocalisse from Two Little Mice and Acheron Games. And I shall bring about the Armageddon right after this. Howdy, 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 gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, today, something a bit different, a Kickstarter preview. If you follow the Gaming Gang, then you already know I don't present a lot of Kickstarter previews. But when I do, it's something that's really caught my eye, and I want to make sure that you're aware of that project. Today, I'll be sharing a preview of Apocalisse from Two Little Mice and Acheron Games. If you're familiar with the award-winning Broncolonia or Lex Arcana or Inferno, then you're already familiar with the people behind Apocalisse. What is Apocalisse? It is a 5e post-apocalyptic setting inspired by the Book of Revelation. Interesting. So before I dive in and start talking about this Kickstarter project, let me make sure that you know the fine folks over at Acheron Games did reach out to me and asked if I would take a look at some of the material for Apocalisse and put together this video. So I have been compensated for this video. Full disclosure, I want to make sure that you're aware of that. Also, no one had editorial control of what I say in this video. So there's that. So let's talk about the project itself. It is slated to begin mid-February. And I have to point out, I do not have pledge level information or stretch goal information, anything along those lines. Now, when the Kickstarter does launch, I will share news with that information on my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, as well as follow up with a news article on thegaminggang.com. But I do know that this project is aiming to fund a trio of hardcover volumes. The first being Apocalisse, which is going to be the core setting book. It is John's Guide to the Armageddon. And it's going to include what I believe will be more GM-facing information. So it's going to be the nuts and bolts of the setting, a lot of background, a lot of information about what's happened since the apocalypse, because this setting actually takes place 2 decades after the apocalypse has taken place. So the world is in ruin. So that's going to be the first volume. Now, the second volume is the Book of Revelation. And I do believe this is going to be more player-facing. So we have new character archetypes and spells and virtues and sins and origins. So player characters in Apocalisse don't have backgrounds. They have origins. So, and I'll talk about that in a little more depth in just a few moments. So I think all that information is going to mainly be in the Book of Revelation. And then, of course, the third volume is Monsters of the Armageddon. And that's essentially going to be our monster manual for Apocalisse. And there are supposed to be over 50 new creatures and monsters to be included in Apocalisse. Now, one of the things that really caught my eye about this project is the artwork. And it shouldn't have come as any surprise, because I've shared video coverage of Broncolonia and Lex Arcana. And one thing is the artwork is just spectacular. It is fantastic in both of those series. So it really shouldn't come as any surprise that once again we have stunning artwork with Apocalisse. And I happen to be one of these people that really believes that great RPG artwork really gets the creative juices flowing, not only for the game master, but also for players who read various volumes that are open to them. So really, really impressed by the artwork. And you will see more artwork as this video continues. So what about the setting? As I mentioned, this is a 5e post-apocalyptic setting inspired by the Book of Revelation. So 20 years ago, the 7 seals have opened. So depending on how much you know about the Book of Revelation, various different things happen as each of these seals open. So the 7th seal is the final seal, which essentially condemns the world to the Lord's judgment. So the final battle has not taken place. We have 3 major factions. We have the throne, which is the forces of the Lord. And then we have the abyss, which are the forces of the adversary. And then we have the last ones. And those are the player characters. They are the last bastions of humanity. And they mainly reside in the city of Babylonia. So one aspect of this setting I think is very interesting is the factions are not in open conflict. So the final battle has not begun. So each of the factions are kind of moving their chess pieces on the board, trying to get as big of an advantage over the other factions before the final battle begins. So once again, as I mentioned, the apocalypse took place in the past. Now, when the first 4 seals were opened, each of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse emerged. So we've got conquest, death, famine, and war. And I think it's pretty cool in Apocalisse that the 4 horsemen still reside on the earth. So they rule over regions of the planet. And I thought that was kind of cool. And it's also interesting that they don't have any allegiance to any faction. Now, of course, those factions are trying to get horsemen on their side for the final battle, but the horsemen themselves have absolutely no allegiance whatsoever. So is this our modern world? No. Is it the earth? Is it our earth? I don't know. The artwork and the character designs, the fashion, kind of looks kind of a Renaissance era to me. In fact, funny enough, looking at especially one piece of artwork, which you're going to see, it's one of the character archetypes, almost makes me think that this is the Broncolonia setting facing its final judgment. So I thought that's kind of interesting. So is this like a D&D setting facing the final judgment? No, not really, because there are no demi-humans in Apocalisse. Now, that said, it is mentioned that if you want elves and halflings and dwarves and such in your game, you certainly can. You can certainly use them. Remember, this is a 5e source book and setting books. So there is that as well. So there is a 64-page quick start, which is going to be available on the Kickstarter project page, and it'll give players a bit of a feel for Apocalisse. Now, there's a good amount of material in the quick start, but of course, we are talking about funding 3 volumes. So, of course, there is going to be a ton of info that is not in the quick start. But having read the quick start, my interest is really piqued by this setting. There is a lot of cool stuff included in the quick start. Now, some of that cool stuff happens to be new character archetypes. So the first of the new archetypes, it is a martial archetype, is the Furioso. So these are warriors. They are mercenaries, but they don't fight for coin. They actually love the finest in clothing, and food is something that is not readily available. So they'll fight for that. They'll fight for sacred idols, and they like to adorn themselves with these vestiges of the old pre-apocalypse world. They also find themselves or believe themselves to be the final upholders of civility in the world. So they have no necessarily affiliation with either the throne, Babylonia, or the abyss. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But they are just fantastic warriors. They're a bit cocky. They're a bit of bravos. They are very courageous, but also probably a bit foolhardy. Then next up, we'll have the sorcerers of otherworldly bloodlines. And they happen to be the offspring of angels and mortals mating, or demons and mortals mating. Because keep in mind, on this world, in this setting, angels and demons and such, they walk the earth. They live among the last ones. So these sorcerers, many times, depending on what their bloodline is, they're going to have physical attributes that make it very, very hard for them to disguise the facts that they are sorcerers of otherworldly bloodline. So if they're an offspring of an angel and a human, then they may have a halo, or they may have glowing eyes, or a beautiful voice, a melodious voice. Then again, maybe if they're an offspring of a demon and human, they may have completely black eyes, or they may have mandibles, or maybe little horns protruding from their forehead. Now, the cool thing about this archetype is they aren't necessarily tied into the faction that they are offspring of. So just because you would have a character who's the offspring of an angel and a human does not necessarily mean they're going to be followers of or part of the forces of the throne. So these characters will use sorcerer's items, mysterious artifacts, as well as have spells available to them as well. Now there's a new bard archetype, which is very cool, and it is the Bard of Revelation. And these characters actually cry tears of blood, and they carry these big volumes with them, these huge tomes, and the tears fall upon the blank page, and they form shapes, and the bards have visions of the future, and many times they see catastrophic events that are about to take place, and these bards attempt to prevent them from happening. So I thought it was very, very interesting. I really like this archetype quite a bit. But my favorite of the 4 archetypes that are included in the Quick Start happens to be the Wormwood Spectre, which is a new rogue archetype. And during the apocalypse, these meteors struck the earth, and they landed in bodies of water, so oceans, lakes, rivers, and they turned that water to poison, this wormwood. And people drank this wormwood, and normally they'll die, but some have been changed by it. Now, these wormwood specters tend to be assassins, and they have very shadowy abilities. But once again, they are not necessarily tied into, say, the abyss, right? They're assassins, but they don't necessarily have to be affiliated with forces of the abyss. They could easily be affiliated with forces of the throne, or the last ones, So you're not necessarily locked into having to be affiliated with a faction, even if you are a Wormwood Spectre. Like I said, this is my favorite of the 4 archetypes that are shared in the Quick Start. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a sucker for Plague Doctor masks. Maybe that's why. Because the artwork for all 4 of these archetypes are pretty sweet. Really like those quite a bit. And of course, you're actually seeing the pre-gens for the introductory adventure that is included in the Quick Start. As I had mentioned, the Quick Start has a lot packed into it. Of course, nowhere near what we're going to see from the 3 volumes, but it really, it's, in my opinion, it goes far more in depth than a lot of Quick Starts I have seen over the years. So keep that in mind. As I mentioned, there is an introductory adventure, which I found to be pretty interesting. Now, something else I do want to mention is that we have other aspects to the characters. So we have virtues and sins. We don't have alignment in Apocalisse. So we have virtues and sins, and all characters have both. So that will give them certain abilities and great aspects for helping people role play their characters. We also have origins. We do not have backgrounds. So it's possible that the player characters were born prior to the apocalypse, or maybe they were born after the apocalypse, or they could be souls that have been cast out from hell or heaven or purgatory, and they have taken flesh on the earth, and they also are the last ones. So just because maybe it's an expelled, hell risen is what the origin is called, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be playing as an evil character or a character that is affiliated with the abyss. So there are a multitude of different origins. The only one that's actually delved into in the Quick Start is the Hell Risen. But it looks like each of these origins will be pretty interesting. So in this introductory adventure, the player characters set off from the city of Babylonia to try to obtain an ancient relic, which is of great interest to the forces of the throne. And of course, once they find this relic, then things really get interesting. So I don't want to spoil anything here, but the Quick Start does have 4 pre-gens of those 4 archetypes that I've already shared, and they are actually 3rd level. They are 3rd level characters. So here's some artwork from some of the creatures that are in the introductory adventure, as well as being in the Monsters of the Armageddon volume of Apocalisse. So once again, this Kickstarter project is going to launch in mid-February. So I will have much more information about pledge levels and stretch goals once we see the launch of the Kickstarter. I have to say, from what I have seen, I am really intrigued by Apocalisse. It's not word for word, verbatim Book of Revelations, and you don't have to have any necessary religious affiliation to really enjoy the setting from what I have seen. So I am really excited to see what Two Little Mice and Acheron Games is going to share with us for Apocalisse. This is something that looks like it could truly be another special 5e setting in the vein of Broncolonia and Inferno. It looks to be that good. So I definitely recommend, if you found this video to be interesting at all, when that Kickstarter kicks off, take a peek. All right, that is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ding that bell. It will not only let you know when I upload original videos such as this, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you won't find here on the YouTube channel. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And until I see you next time, here's hoping each and every one of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.
Oh, hey, you're still here. That's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.